I'm Shannon Matthews. I'm Dean of the College of Arts and Sciences. On behalf of the Board of Trustees, President Dixon, Provost O'Donnell, who's in the audience, I would like to welcome you to the University of La Verne's 2026 Frederick Douglass Human Rights Lecture. Before we get started, I would like to take a moment to thank the Board of Trustees who, through dedicated allocations, have continued to support this very important community speaker series. Now to you, the audience and our community members, I extend a heartfelt thank you for your participation and interest today, not only in learning more about homelessness and a human rights issue, but in seeking insights that might help us all act together for a better tomorrow. The University of La Verne's Frederick Douglass Human Rights Lecture was created to highlight the importance of human rights issues and principles to our students and community across intersecting disciplinary approaches. Through public lectures and seminars, the university invites contemporary scholars, thought leaders, authors, activists, and policymakers to promote dialogue beyond the walls of the campus and to act to bridge between scholarly insights and the practical and lived realities of human rights concerns. The lecture is amply named after and honors the famed 19th century author, orator, and abolitionist and activist Frederick Douglass, who was an eminent human rights leader in the anti-slavery movement. The lecture serves as a forum during Black History Month as part of our programming to address issues related to social justice, peace, and human dignity. Speakers are permitted by their schedules to visit a class and foster intellectual exchange, which I hear went well this morning. And they sometimes also are able to meet with community members in this forum, which will be followed with a Q&A. The goal of the series is to prompt thought, discussion, and action as we collectively seek to address human rights issues impacting our community. Since my arrival 5 years ago, we have discussed human rights related to education, identity, wealth gaps, financial literacy, human trafficking, and immigration, and now homelessness. This year's theme is surely divinely ordered, as our featured speaker has shared that he has a deep connection to Frederick Douglass and demonstrates work akin to his legacy. Now, with that teaser, I will hand over the podium to Matthew Kuntz, who will bring forth, and he actually was a student, or one of our alum, who brought to our attention the wonderful work being done by our featured speaker. And he will now give the introduction, so you'll learn more about Dr. Ryan Smith.
I'm a little tall, sorry y'all. Afternoon, everyone. My name is Matthew Kuntz. I am current alumnus here at the University of La Verne, class of 2014. I majored in liberal arts with an emphasis in behavioral public relations. Currently work as a program manager with St. Joseph Center, and I work as, there we go. I work as a program manager for interim housing at St. Joseph Center, which specializes in providing homeless services throughout Los Angeles County and beyond. So, I have the pleasure of nominating Dr. Ryan to be the featured speaker for today's event. I believe he is a perfect candidate to speak on the topic of homelessness. Not only does he have an extensive history of work dedicated to humanitarianism and addressing homelessness, but he exemplifies being a change agent of homelessness through his passion and dedication to the cause. Dr. Ryan J. Smith is the president and CEO of St. Joseph Center in Los Angeles, California. For nearly 50 years, St. Joseph Center has been a leading force in supporting working poor families and unhoused individuals across Los Angeles County. As one of the county's largest social service providers, the organization delivers housing services, outreach and engagement, food assistance, mental health support, job training, and workforce development to nearly 15,000 people each year in LA and beyond. Prior to touring St. Joseph Center, Dr. Smith served as Chief Strategy Officer at Community Coalition, an organization committed to transforming the social and economic condition of the South Los Angeles and beyond. In that role, he led the organization's strategic initiatives and power-building efforts. He also served as the executive lead for the South Central Youth Empowered Through Action program, also known as SCYEA. Previously, Dr. Smith was interim CEO and Chief External Officer of LA Unified's Partnership for Los Angeles Schools, where he supported 15,000 students and their families in the neighborhoods of Watts, Boyle Heights, and South Los Angeles. He also founded the award-winning Parent College program, which has empowered over 10,000 youth and families in underserved communities by educating them about their rights, roles, and responsibilities in the education system. Earlier in his career, Dr. Smith served as Executive Director of the Education Trust West and Vice President of Strategic Advocacy for the Education Trust, a national education civil rights organization focused on closing opportunity gaps. There, he pioneered a community initiative that provided financial and strategic resources to support grassroots advocacy across California. Dr. Smith holds a Bachelor of Arts and a Doctorate of Education from UCLA. He is a recipient of the National Annie E. Casey Children and Family Fellowship and the Choral Fellowship in Public Affairs. He serves on multiple boards, including Covenant House California, which supports youth experiencing homelessness statewide, and Abode Communities, a nonprofit affordable housing developer that builds and operates supportive, sustainable housing for low-income families, seniors, and individuals across California. His deep commitment to civic engagement was recently recognized with UCLA's inaugural Excellence in Civic Engagement Award. Please help me welcome to the podium the 2026 Frederick Douglass Human Rights Keynote Speaker, Dr. Ryan J. Smith. Thank you.
All right, good afternoon. I'm so honored to be here at the University of Laverne to talk about the importance of housing and addressing homelessness in this generation, particularly as we are in an inflection point. But before I delve in, I want to thank the Dean for your amazing and kind words and all that you are doing here to continue to advance the cause of educating our young minds. Matthew, so I have to brag a little bit. I really believe in the power of radical care. We talk about that at St. Joseph's Center. One of the things that we were founded to believe, it's not just what you do, but it's how you do it. And Matthew is doing life-saving work every day, helping thousands of people get the resources they need. It is not easy work. It can be challenging. We talk about it being hard work and heart work, but you exemplify that every day. Not only do you make me proud, but as an alum of this amazing institution, you make this college, this university, your colleagues proud. So congratulations. A round of applause for Matthew and all that you do. All right, go Leo Leopards. So I'm really excited to be here and do want to wish everyone a happy Black History Month. When I was approached about this opportunity, two things came to mind. One, if there was ever a time to celebrate and honor the humanitarian that is Frederick Douglass, now is that time. A time where I think we're talking about how we bring our country, our world together at a time where there seems to be a lot of division. But Frederick Douglass is a personal hero. So much so that I have a tattoo of his face, actually this tattoo on my arm. And above that tattoo says, "Without a struggle, there can be no progress." It has anchored me through so much. His words have inspired me to continue the good work. So to get an email saying, "Can you talk about Frederick Douglass? Can you participate?" I said, "Can I?" I'm really honored and fortunate, particularly as it relates to the work that I do. And want to tell you a little bit about who I am, where I came from, and how it relates to what some have called our humanitarian crisis of this century. But I want to start here with a quote that says, "No man can put a chain about the ankle of his fellow man without finding the other fastened around his own neck." It's a quote that Frederick Douglass made to talk about our collective connection. I grew up with a mom and dad who believed in this idea of linked faith, that no one can truly be successful if your brothers and sisters and communities fail. And when I think about our work to address and end homelessness and to build housing so that everyone has a roof over their head, I think about this because we're talking about our dear neighbors. We're talking about those who are in our communities. We're talking about our fellow man. So I appreciate this quote from Frederick Douglass. I want to tell you a little bit about myself and who I am. This is a picture of me as a baby and my mother. I like to say I know I've grown less cute as I've gotten older. My mother actually was an amazing woman who was a single mom who actually spent her life savings to move from South Los Angeles to a neighborhood called Culver City because she heard the schools were good. And she did everything to build a home over 10 years so that I could thrive and finish high school and go on to college. And that remained so until one day we received an eviction notice on our door. And my mother handed me a trash bag and said, the home that we built for 10 years, we would have to evacuate in 10 hours. We gathered all of our belongings. We were in our car. And my mother, a brilliant woman, college-educated woman, knocked on our neighbor's door and said, "My son is so close to finishing high school. Will you allow us to sleep on your couch so that he can actually finish school in this district, finish his schooling in this district?" That neighbor said yes. And as I went to school, it was an assistant principal and counselor when I thought maybe I should go get a job, maybe I shouldn't do this, my mother's struggling, who paid for my college application to UCLA. The day it was due, in order for me to apply and go on. I got into UCLA. I went there 3 times over. I have to say that every day because I owe them so much money at this point. But I'll always remember that it was that continuum of care. It was my neighbor. It was my counselor. It was my assistant principal who decided that they would ensure that I'd be successful. And I want to say that that is the type of work that is needed in order to ensure that we end and address homelessness in this generation. And I'm grateful and lucky for that. I do like to tell a little bit about my father. So my father had challenges. He wasn't always around, but he believed in the power of education. He believed in the power of the arts. He cultivated that I could do anything I set my mind to, and ensured that I had everything I could possibly have, given limited resources. I appreciate that. He also had a passion to give back, and he often quoted that famous Alice Walker quote that, giving back is the rent that we pay on this planet. It's one of the reasons why I continue the work that I do this day. As I mentioned, I went to UCLA, not the Leopards, but an amazing institution, and I was I came in actually post Proposition 209, which ended affirmative action in California. That was important because out of class of 8,000 freshmen, I was one of 27 black men who were in that class. That was actually less than 1967. I'll never forget that the chancellor said when he was welcoming us, "Look to your left, look to your right. One of you will not be here." Well, all the brothers, we were sitting together. So when we looked to our left and right and did the math, we said only 13 of us would advance. And those data were true. It fueled my belief and desire that we must do something more to ensure that people have everything they need to be successful. After that, I graduated, which was great. I spent some time teaching and doing work in the orphanages in Cuernavaca, in DF, Mexico. So, entonces, para ustedes que hablan español, mi nombre en México es Chocolatote Grandote, mis estudiantes. For those who don't speak Spanish, my name is Giant Chocolate to my students. Fitting. It was something about that experience that made me really excited about ways that we can build coalitions, ways that we can work together across language, across difference, to ensure that everyone has a place to call home. And living in the orphanage with my students taught me so much, which brings me to some of the work that I've done. We can go. I helped found a parent college that exists to this day for LAUSD families that have educated more than 10,000 parents on their rights, roles, and responsibilities. I helped create data and think about democratizing data for people, and here are some reports that reflected that talked about how we move opportunity gaps, particularly for those who are most marginalized. I think narratives are so important, and today I celebrate the passing of my father, who passed actually about 4 years ago. Actually, not about, 4 years ago today. This was the last picture that we took together. He was the person who, this was actually a fundraiser. He had started to give back in Inglewood, California, by not only feeding people experiencing homelessness, but leading drives to do so. He's the one who recommended, remember that PhD program you started? Maybe you should finish that. And I appreciated him for that, because it was because of him that I actually finished my PhD, and I'll just do this. That's a picture of me, and I have to believe that my father was really proud of that moment. And then I just wanted to go back and give you an update. Let's see if I know how to go back. Okay, and this is a picture of me and my mother. I'm grateful for her. You heard about her sacrifice. I get to now do the care work that she gave to me. She's experiencing a severe mental illness and lives with me now. I am her full-time caretaker, her only child, so I take care of her every day. And I'm grateful for that. I get to give back to the amazing woman who sacrificed so much in giving to me. And that brings me a little bit to the work that I do today. So I am fortunate to lead the St. Joseph Center. As you heard earlier, we are one of LA's largest homeless service and housing organizations. We support 15,000 people through housing and outreach and mental health, as well as economic mobility efforts. We are celebrating 50 years of doing that work. We were founded by an amazing group of sisters who took social justice classes at Mount St. Bernard's, one who taught it, one who took the class, and decided, well, we have to actually be about action. We can't just learn about social justice. By the way, when I say sisters, I mean nuns. These were amazing nuns who gave all, pooled their resources together, opened a storefront in Venice, California, bought a big red truck in order to distribute resources, in particular to immigrant families, and decided that it was important that we uplift our dear neighbor through compassion and dignity. Even started a restaurant for good called the Bread and Roses Cafe that exists to this day in order to serve meals with linen and flowers to those who were experiencing homelessness, to remind us and them of their dignity. We are celebrating 35 years of the Bread and Roses Cafe. By the way, that's named after a women's suffrage song, which was in the 1920s. Yes, give us our bread, feed our bodies, but give us our roses, give us the vote, which again is a reflection of their social justice roots. We are celebrating 1 million meals served to people experiencing homelessness through that cafe. 1 million meals served. And we have an amazing chef who's given up a celebrity career to create Ethiopian food and amazing Japanese food, a different meal every day to nearly 500 people weekly. And Chef James, if you're out there, thank you for all that you do, and Chef Christella as well. I'm honored to be at the helm of St. Joseph Center at a really important time in our history, and excited to talk about how we move the needle around the work that we do. I will say that we think of ourselves as a beloved community of people. Martin Luther King talks about a beloved community, one that moves the needle and ensures that we all are taking care of each other, but also that we pass policies and practices that address poverty and move the needle on the issues of hunger. And we continue to do the great work around a beloved community, and here are some pictures of the amazing staff. 60% of our staff have experienced homelessness themselves and or have been formerly incarcerated. The majority of our staff are Black and brown, and they are doing life-saving work. We can't say enough. When the fires came in LA County, our outreach team were one of the first respondents, making sure that folks on the west side who were experiencing homelessness received the resources that they needed. You can't tell me that they're not doing the good work every day. So I just want to thank the amazing St. Joseph Center team for all that they do. A round of applause for those amazing men and women and folks who could be doing anything. So as we talk about the work, we must outline what's happening around this issue at scale. So nationally, over 770,000 people are experiencing homelessness currently. 770,000 people in the United States are experiencing homelessness. When we think about what that means, we think about there being a supply failure, as only 35 affordable homes exist for every 100 extreme low-income renters. Only 35 affordable homes exist for every 100 extremely low-income renters. I was talking to one of the amazing classes of students here before I came here, and they asked, what are the root causes of this issue? And we always have to talk about housing and the inaffordability of housing in this moment. When the median rent rises $100, we see on average an increase of 9% in homelessness across the country. And we talk about the income gap. Right now, when rents are up about 23% since 2001, but incomes are only up 5%. We are not keeping up with the level and amount of housing, how much it's increased, and what our income is. And we know that homelessness is caused by a number of factors, but certainly as housing costs increase, and we know that income is not keeping up. And this is important because there's a lot of questions about why homelessness, but to talk a little bit more about that. So we have some good news and we should celebrate it. We know that we're seeing decreases in homelessness across the country. In fact, there is some good emerging data that are showing that for some of the first times nationally, we are seeing a decrease in homelessness overall. I think that is to be celebrated and to be admired for the wonderful work that's happening. And we know that we're seeing some good changes and shifts in California as well. But we should know that in our amazing state, California has the largest population of people experiencing homelessness, and nearly 50% of all unsheltered people live here in the state. When we talk about we are the epicenter of this humanitarian crisis, the data actually show that as well. We talk about the scale of Los Angeles, which is my home county. We have 75,000 people who are experiencing homelessness in LA County currently. Once again, I want to say 75,000 people. We're talking about the Olympics coming to Los Angeles soon. Well, we know that these numbers show that when we think about sports, if we have any sports fans, we could fill up Intuit Dome. We could fill up what I still consider to be the Staples Center, although it's crypto now. We could fill up two of our football stadiums and still have a number of folks who would be experiencing homelessness. It is a large scale in LA County. And we know that Los Angeles has more people experiencing homelessness than any US city. But I want to say that for some, people have talked about homelessness as being insurmountable. But I want to make sure that we understand a couple things. One, that when we're talking about our work in addressing and ending homelessness, we're talking about downstream work that is remediating issues that are happening upstream that we need to do a better job of. As we mentioned, affordability, how we are building housing, how we are ensuring that those who are on the who are falling through the cracks do not experience homelessness at all. And we also should say that mass street homelessness is a modern phenomenon. When you look at the 50s and 60s, you did not see the scale of homelessness that we see before. Homelessness is a policy decision. It's where we've lacked investment. It's where we have not actually ensured that everyone can have a roof over their head. It's where we have seen market-driven policies that have increased the cost of housing over time, and where a lot of our social safety net has not caught up with the reality of what's happening. So we know when I say it's a policy decision, affordable housing shortages have always driven homelessness. Los Angeles has lost 15,000 supportive units over the last couple of decades, 15,000 single occupancy units. And we know there's a cost escalation here. Home prices in LA have increased 6 times over the last decade. We also know there's a massive rent burden. So the median rent today is $2,800, and it's the 1970 equivalent would be $900. There is a serious rent burden for most folks. So we were talking about this in our class about mental illness and how we address this issue. I want to say this is personal because I, of course, am a caretaker for somebody who is experiencing a severe mental illness. We must address any mental illness challenges, whether it's in our unhoused population or across the board. And yes, we know that there's people experiencing mental illness within people experiencing homelessness, but a couple things are true. One, when the evidence base shows that it is not a disproportionate amount of people who are experiencing homelessness who are also experiencing mental illness than we see in the average population. Someone came up to me the other day and said, well, if these people only would have therapy, if they only would accept mental health supports. And I said, you can look in your family. You can look in the broader community and know that there is a lot of need around mental illness. And yes, homelessness is visible, but that doesn't mean that every person who's experiencing homelessness has mental health challenges or a substance use disorder challenge. And mass homelessness definitely does not. I also want to talk about equity disparities as we're talking about homelessness. So right now, 70% of LA County's homeless, people who are experiencing homelessness are people of color. 70% of our unhoused population are people of color. People who identify as Black, although we make up 7% of the LA County population, we make up 30% of those who are experiencing homelessness. And I have to say that this is not a reflection of the brilliance of Black people. It's not a reflection of where the Black community is at. This is a reflection of the systemic inequities that exist, that have pushed Black folks out of housing. We can talk about redlining. We can talk about the history of segregation. We can talk about ways in which Black and brown communities have not been able to build wealth in this country. And those were policy decisions that were made, and we are once again seeing the outcomes of that. We also know that for Latino folks, they are overrepresented in our unhoused community, and we have actually seen that increase since COVID. And because many of our immigration policy shifts that are happening in real time are changing our landscape, we believe we will see more and more folks who are immigrants, folks who may identify as being Latino and an immigrant, who may be experiencing homelessness. And we know that homelessness follows the map of segregation, and there's a lot of amazing books that outline that as well. So we know historical policy is important. When we talk about disparities that exist, we're talking about redlining of communities where some folks could not move into. We're talking about exclusion from home ownership that still shapes our outcomes that we see today. And there are two populations I really want to talk about in disparities, actually three. One are older adults. We work a lot with folks who have fixed incomes. In fact, we run the largest food pantry on the west side of Los Angeles. We've seen almost a doubling of folks who are aging, who are on fixed incomes, who are coming to our food pantry. We often support 700 people who are experiencing food insecurity at our food pantry every week. About 3 weeks ago, we had 500 people in one day. And because of the changes in SNAP benefits, because of some of the other challenges with food security, we believe that's going to increase. But people are absolutely choosing about whether they should put food on the table or pay rent. And we see that more and more, particularly amongst our aging population. We also see that women are experiencing homelessness in rates faster than men, and families are connected to some of that as well. We have a program called Code Talk, which supports the job readiness of women experiencing homelessness through learning coding and coding skills as well as project management skills. But many of those participants will say that we are not meeting the needs of women experiencing homelessness enough. We're not creating spaces to have the discussion about how we really move the needle, and that the system was not designed to really meet the needs of women-identified folks. We also know that homelessness is a racial justice issue and always has been. And I also, particularly here, want to say that we are seeing a lot more housing insecurity and homelessness among students, and this tends to be silent in that issue. We are seeing students who unfortunately have to use their cars and their vehicles to be housed, or who are couch surfing more, or experiencing food insecurity at rates that honestly the data are not showing because we're not doing a good job capturing it, but we are anecdotally hearing, particularly amongst students across LA County, that they need more supports, and we have not created enough housing to support our students, and even students who come to an amazing institution like UCLA or University of Laverne or any CSU. We have to continue to figure out how we meet the needs to support our students. Homelessness is solvable, and we see a lot of best practices to really support that. And there is some good news. We saw during the pandemic where we were able to marshal resources, emergency rental assistance that prevented homelessness to surge. We saw decreases during the pandemic because we were able to really ensure that we connected resources to where people were at. We have progress to applaud because in LA County, we've seen nearly a 20% decline in unsheltered homelessness across LA, 20% decline in the last 2 years alone. We've seen a 55% decrease in veteran homelessness since 2009. We should celebrate that success. Look, a round of applause for actual progress when it comes. We've also seen that when we think about what has worked, we've seen a combination of housing and services and coordination as well as data, using all of these together to ensure that we are meeting people where they're at and that we're nimble and flexible enough to move that needle. And then retention. It's not just getting folks inside, but it's ensuring that we sustain them inside. I want to say this because there is an attack on housing first policies, there's an attack on trauma-informed policies, but permanent supportive housing works when we couple housing with case management and programs and community supports. We see folks thrive. And we have seen that 90% of people who are housed in permanent supportive housing stay housed. And this is important because there have been proposals from our federal administration to cut permanent supportive housing by 70%, which would mean the folks who are currently in permanent supportive housing would be exited back into homelessness. The other thing I want to say, because this is my beloved city of Los Angeles, beloved community of California, there are many world events that are going to come up. We have a World Cup, there was an All-Star game, we have a Super Bowl, and then we have the Olympics. We learned that in Paris, folks said the streets look so great, and that was because they created a tent city 30 miles outside of Paris for people who were experiencing homelessness. We have seen that criminalization rises when many of these world events come to a city. There are Supreme Court decisions and decisions across our country that are ticketing folks. And from our own outreach team at St. Joseph Center, we are seeing an increase in ticketing and arrest of people experiencing homelessness. As someone from a community that has unfortunately been impacted by the disproportionate reality of criminalization, I want to say now, you cannot arrest your way out of homelessness. That jail is not an option for addressing this issue. And how we were founded in the principles of radical care and lifting your neighbors as yourselves, that is not lifting folks into our criminal justice system. That does not work. But what does work, and what is a call to action today, is that we build deeply more affordable housing in this country, that we protect renters so that they're not falling into homelessness, that we invest in prevention, that we prevent folks from experiencing homelessness, and we know to end homelessness, we must prevent it, and that we ensure that we lead with a lens of equity and ensuring that we can move the needle on some of the disparities that we talked today. And I want to give some examples. St. Joseph Center has been the lead of the oceanfront walk work. After the pandemic, we saw hundreds of people across Venice Beach who were in encampments. And there was an outcry from the community what we should do. St. Joseph Center, leveraging the encampment to home research that happened, marshaled its resources along with a number of partners. We were able to secure interim housing and permanent housing for folks before we even spoke to them, so that we understood we had the housing supply. And then our amazing outreach team got to work. And over the course of 2 months, build relationships with each of the people who were experiencing homelessness, got to know their names, got to know their stories, got to know their concerns. Said, if you are ready, we can bring you inside. And over the course of that 2 months, they were able to reduce the folks who were experiencing homelessness in Venice Beach almost 80%. And not only that, they were able to move 90% of those people who were brought into interim housing into permanent housing. That's an example that when we marshal resources and we work together, we can move the needle and address this issue. Also, as we celebrate 50 years, we're telling 50 stories, success stories of what's happening. And I won't tell you 50. But I will tell you 3 quick stories. Last week, we had an event where 3 of our amazing family members talked about their journey. This is Rachel. Oh, nope, that is not Rachel. This is Rachel. Rachel was a single mom of 2 who was working and unfortunately was not able to keep up with her rent, experienced homelessness, moved her family into her car. She told them it was an adventure as they moved from parking lot to parking lot. She was concerned about what would happen to her family and their safety. She said she found St. Joseph Center and was able to start to receive case management support, and ultimately was moved into interim housing, which we have an amazing safe landing site called SOLA that has a number of trailers that have been repurposed for interim housing. Rachel has 2 amazing daughters, and one of her daughters went to school and said, "We live in an amazing van house," to her students. But with tears in her eyes, she said, "You don't understand, my children would never tell people where they lived. I knew I was doing something right because they actually told somebody where they lived and also invited them to sleep over." And Rachel said, "Hey, don't tell everybody our business." But she said she was delighted to see that they were delighted to be housed. Well, later on, we were able to provide supports for jobs. She's actually currently working with people who are incarcerated and helping to support them on their journey. And I'm happy to say that she is now permanently housed. She has her own place to call home with her 2 daughters. And she's studying to be a truck driver. I said, okay, now they're gonna have a truck house too. And when we asked her, well, what was the secret sauce? She said, it was that people believed in me and my family when it was hard for me to do so. And at this event, we had the founding order of sisters, the amazing nuns who were there, and she turned to them and said, your work is not in vain. Then there is the amazing story of Stephen. Stephen had fallen on hard times, had lost his job, was suffering from some substance use disorder challenges, and he enrolled in our Bread and Roses kitchen training program. We also have a chef's program. He said, I always understood that there was power in food, but he wasn't sure this would work out. In fact, he said, my first class, and this was last March, I was not sober. But he said he had $25 left, and he had to decide whether he would put that in gas to come. Well, he ended up going to the class, became sober through supports, but also he wanted to ensure that he finished the program. He unfortunately could not keep up with his car payments, so he ended up taking public transportation 3 hours to us and 3 hours back every single day for months. He learned the skills. He graduated in July. He became a sous chef at Intuit Dome for the LA Clippers, is now a chef, has graduated to becoming a full-fledged chef for the LA Clippers, has started a pop-up restaurant at Intuit Dome, and just this past weekend was the caterer for the All-Star game. But not only that, he described, he says, I'm proud of all those things, but what I'm really proud to say is through all of that, I remain sober, and I am sober for this entire year because I want to ensure that I can be successful. And when I asked him, well, what is the secret ingredient for you? He said it was the amazing Kim, who runs the program. It was Ariel, who called me every day. It was Chef Tomas, who was hard on us. But I knew somebody believed in me, and I can now give back to my family through food. And I applaud Stephen for that. Last but certainly not least, I want to tell the story of Malik. Malik is 20 years old. But when St. Joseph Center came across him, he was in the 7th grade. His family had moved from Detroit to LA, and they unfortunately experienced homelessness when he was in the 4th grade. He said, I was in the car in front of Skid Row, that me and my mother slept on the beach in Santa Monica, that he had challenges figuring out what he was going to do. We have an amazing caseworker, Melanie, who met Malik in the 7th grade. Malik said, I at first was really scared of Melanie because she would come to my after-school program and they would call on the intercom, hey Malik, can you come by? Melanie's here, and he would say, I would run away. I didn't know who this woman was coming to support me. And by the way, she's a caseworker in our youth resource team program in Santa Monica. Met him in the 7th grade, supported him in his academic career. In the 8th grade, he had a child. and became a dad of an amazing young woman. It was St. Joseph Center and those around him who gave him parenting support to figure out how he would continue his work. Well, do you know that Melody followed him all the way to 20 years old and is still his caseworker? That she has followed him through each shelter that he's been with, each challenge. He made sure he graduated from high school, and he did graduate from high school, and is now enrolled in Santa Monica College. He is currently staying at a youth shelter, but he was able to announce last week that he is going to be one of the first recipients of youth housing that Santa Monica built. He will have a home for him and his daughter. But imagine that. Melody knew him in the 7th grade, and she still stands by him at 20 years old. And that's important because the journey goes up and down, and yet love helps us move forward. And when we asked Malik, well, what helped you to get through this point? By the way, he said, well, you know, the 4th grade was fire for me. I was like, I know I'm old, because I was like, fire, what is this? Is that a good thing, right? He said, but, you know, I have what I call my OGs, Melody and then Natalie, who runs the program. They have made sure that I'm stable through it all. And I'm so excited to be on this journey. You know, I tell these stories because I want folks to know that even despite the narrative, despite the struggle, despite what people say in the press, that it can be done. It can be done. And Melody and Rachel, Stephen, and even myself are products of the radical love and care that's needed to move this issue forward. The last thing is we need political will. It was Frederick Douglass that said, power concedes nothing without a demand. When I think about our communities, when I think about our immigrant families who are under attack in this country, when I think about our higher education systems who ensured somebody like me would thrive but are now attacked for the work that they do, and the educators within those, when I think about how many of our social services are being cut to the bone, and how there's so many folks who don't know where their next meal may come from in the richest country in the entire world. When I pass an encampment that we're working with, when my staff come to me and say, can this be possible? I remind them of the story of the sisters who pulled together resources to open a storefront, and 50 years later have helped tens of thousands of people have a place to call home. And imagine when we pull our resources together. Imagine when we hold our hands together. Imagine when we decide that homelessness should not exist in a country like this. Then we will be in the spirit of what Dr. King says, a beloved community. Thank you all. Thank you so much. Appreciate you.